Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott. You are in the Prog Corner. Oh, man. I'm excited about today's episode. I have a special guest. Got a brand new album out. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about his exciting career. And I also want to talk about this cat's YouTube channel. Welcome to the Prog Corner, the one, the only JT Curtis. JT, how you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Scott. I appreciate it. I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel as well, keeping some prog alive.
So since we're on YouTube, we're both YouTubers. Let's just start with your YouTube channel, History of Rock. I'm tagging it on the little banner scroll underneath us, so hopefully we'll get some people curious to check out what you're doing over there. What are you doing over there?
Funny enough, it was a couple of days ago. We started filming History of Rock 2010s, and thanks to all of our followers who helped fund it and everything like that, which was interesting because I think a lot of people will see the 2010s as, oh, that's the era that rock died, which I don't really agree with, but it was kind of interesting to kind of go back and see like anything we missed. And I was so busy through the 2010s putting out my own music, I didn't listen to any new music. So when people are like, oh, what's your favorite music from the 2010s? My own, I don't know. So,
yeah. I think we all go through periods of time like that where for whatever reason we check out of what's happening in contemporary music. And most of the time for musicians, it just means that they're too busy with their own music, either writing, recording, or touring, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, it was just I wasn't hearing a whole lot that I was liking. So, I kind of stepped away for a while. But yeah, in retrospect, the 2010s are actually a fantastic decade for music. So that'll be really exciting to see your take on that. But yeah, your channel is great. I love what you're doing over there. How long have you had the channel, and why did you start it?
I mean, I've been posting stuff on YouTube pretty much since YouTube started, but back then it was like I had a Cream tribute band at the time, so we put a video on because YouTube had just come out, so we put a video of us doing "Sunshine of Your Love," and it was hilarious because we had a couple of comments, and one guy commented is like, "Oh God, why are you guys playing it so slow? Like it's not that slow. It's and then somebody replied under him, it's like, no, I think they're playing it a little too fast." I'm like, YouTube has just started and there's already negative comments.
and that does comment on just the way we as human beings hear music. We both heard the same song, but I think it's 96 beats per minute and that clown thinks it's 120 beats per minute. So our brains distort everything, and music is probably the best example of that, where you can have two people listen to the same record and have completely different impressions about them. But yeah, YouTube is a great place for that kind of stuff, the discussion and the debate. And I guess it was just a matter of time before me and my big mouth found its way onto YouTube. And here we are, but it's been going great. And I just love to talk about prog rock. Talk to me about your early musical influences. I read somewhere that you were like into like Yes and ELP and stuff like that when you were younger. So what got your brain thinking about music at an early age?
A lot of it came from my dad's and my mom's record collection. I still have. If you watch my videos, you'll see I have a turntable that I always show. That's my mom's turntable, which I think she got it in the 70s, and I just had to have it fixed, and that cost a pretty penny. And a couple people
probably more than getting a new one, right?
Well, a couple people said like, well, why don't you just get a new record player? I'm like, well, it's got sentimental value. But I mean, my dad had all the Beatles albums, and he had the copy that I showed of Dark Side of the Moon. This one right here, I just happen to have it handy. This is an original copy from 1973.
Nice.
And my dad played the annoying hippie bum, we called him, in History of Rock, and he showed his record, and he's like, yeah, I bought it when it was brand new, and I just listened to it like for 3 days straight. So the Allman Brothers were probably one of my biggest influences growing up as a guitar player. Eric Clapton. Prog, although I liked like some of the Yes stuff and ELP and stuff, I didn't really start dissecting it until later.
Yeah.
I only first heard Close to the Edge a couple of years back when I
Nice.
finally got it on vinyl and I put it on the turntable. I talked about this in my Yes review. I just did a review of it. And first time I put it on, I'm like, what is happening? I was not expecting this
No.
in a good way, you know?
Yeah. It's one of those records that just, I love surprises in music.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you start the album out with a 3.5-minute guitar solo, this frenzied Mahu Vishnu influence thing, not what anybody was expecting. I love stuff like that. I love it when artists surprise you a little bit. And
I remember the first time I heard Wish You Were Here, you know, because I'd heard Dark Side of the Moon. I'm like, oh man, I love this album. I want to hear more Pink Floyd stuff. I got Live at Pompeii. I mean, that was Jesus.
Right.
But Shine On You Crazy Diamond, I'm listening to it. I'm going, is there going to be a vocal in this anytime soon?
Yeah.
And finally, when the vocal came in, I'm like, this is the perfect place for the vocal to come in 9 minutes later.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's just incredible. Wish You Were Here, one of my favorite albums of all time. And it's just amazing what artist of that caliber can do with 4 notes, right?
Oh yeah.
It's the 4 notes built the whole album. I guess apparently they were floundering in the studio. They had no idea what they were doing. They had no direction whatsoever. Then all of a sudden out of the ether comes these 4 notes.
Oh yeah.
And it changed everything. That's the beauty of music. You know, you hear stories about, you know, Sid rolling into the recording studio and stuff like that. Those kind of backstories definitely help.
And it's amazing because I did some pretty heavy research when I reviewed it for my Pink Floyd album review series. And first of all, none of them, they all have different recollections of when Sid came in. But really, like Rick Wright, he's the one who in his interview, you could tell like it affected him the most. And when he's talking about it, it's like, you know, it was real shocked to see him like that. You know, we hadn't seen him. And why would he turn up when we're, you know, it really adds to like the sadness of the melancholy.
And I don't even think everybody even recognized him.
No,
you know,
no.
He looked so different. I don't even think they knew who this dude was that walked in.
So it's a tragedy in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned your dad, the great Jay Curtis. He does appear on this album, doesn't he? But I just want to tell everybody a little bit of backstory. I actually know who your dad is, man. Apparently back when he was a TV executive guy, he was in the TV business forever. But then at some point, I guess he had this idea to like contact some, you know, bootleg pirate TV station in Mexico and do something called Disasterpiece Theater, which, you know, in retrospect, actually was pretty prescient because nobody was doing anything like that before. And it was just so cool. Apparently he had his own moniker. He called himself Celluloid. And I had a friend, I told you this before we went live, but I had a friend that actually collected all those Disasterpiece Theater stuffs on VHS. So when I read that was your dad, I thought, oh man, you definitely got to come on the channel here.
I'll tell you the story if you want, because he told me. Basically, he was working at Channel 6 in San Diego, him and his partner, Bruce Mueller, God rest both of their souls. Basically, I don't know how he came up with the idea of, you know, showing the worst movies of all time. And bear in mind, this was before Mystery Science Theater 3000. And he went to the head of the network and basically said, we want to do this show where we show the worst movies of all time. And he was like, well, you're crazy if you think that I'm going to go and buy a whole bunch of bad albums for this. And he says, you already own them. Because at that time, what would happen is they would buy these movie packages. Like they would get like Frankenstein, but then they would get in that package would be like the Ghost of Frankenstein.
Right. The license holder would bundle them together to try to get a little bit more money out of station.
And the transmitter was in Tijuana. So they would drive down to Tijuana. And that's how they would do the show. So that's how they ended up. And even like, God rest his soul, also, Richard Simmons was actually on the show.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
It is on YouTube somewhere. And there's I only found a quick clip of it, but he comes on. And I guess what happened was he's just like, I told you, Celluloid, that I was coming. And he's like got a fat suit on. He's like pretending he's fat or whatever. You know, no fat shaming. But, and he like, they have like a little bit about it. So Yeah, the fact that Richard Simmons was in.
That's awesome. And if you think about it, you talk about a visionary, because what he was doing all the way back then is what a whole lot of YouTubers are doing right now, reacting to stuff, good or bad, and just making dumb comments throughout a song versus, instead of a movie. But it's the same thing,
Right.
man. I mean, he was way ahead of his time, definitely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny because everybody always says to me, like, "Oh, you must have been influenced by like the angry video game nerd or the nostalgia critic," and we are a little bit. But I would say, no, I really got that from Disasterpiece Theater.
Yeah.
I mean, our other Nick Petrella, who's my co-host, he's literally called the other guy, and that was Bruce's character on Disasterpiece Theater. So I stole that from them.
Oh, that's great stuff. That is fantastic. But I think a lot of people that are tuning in here today, don't care about Jay Curtis and Disasterpiece Theater. They recognize the name because you had yourself a little brush with stardom, a little stint on Broadway. Tell the good people about your experience with Let It Be and Broadway. And I guess you really brought the house down, man. People still talk about J.T. Curtis as George Harrison. How did this happen? Did you audition, or what's the story there?
Yeah, when I was living in Los Angeles, I actually was I was doing a couple of shows where I actually played John Lennon, and they didn't really pan out. But also they wanted me to buy all the costumes. I'm like, I'm not spending money buying costumes. And then when I got to New York, and it's funny because everybody talks to me like, wow, you got to be on Broadway. You have to understand, I had no aspirations of being on Broadway. I just wanted to play music. But this came up, like, I think actually I did try to get on Rain. Rain was on Broadway first, and they were closing, so I didn't end up getting there. And then I found out Let It Be was going to be in. So I contacted Anarin, who were very cool about it. And I said, J.T. Curtis, I did play John Lennon in a couple of and there was like, we'd kind of like to see you as George, because I'd done some lead guitar stuff as George. I was in bands where I did both. And so I sent them an audition tape as John, and then I sent them an audition tape as George. I think I spent more time on the John audition tape, but they took a look at both, said, no, we like you better as George. So I came in and auditioned, and that was it. I mean, they just put me on and said, yeah, you're going to be one of the Georges, the singing Georges. That's not actually what happens, but
one of the Georges. I love that. That's like being one of George Foreman's kids. Hey, you're one of the Georges.
But and really, they kind of just threw me on the stage. I mean, we had a little bit of rehearsal and a little bit of blocking, but I mean, honestly, I had very little theater training aside from when I was in high school, and they just threw me on stage with the London cast. And the first time I remember the first time I was on, it was a matinee, and I was really, really nervous. I usually don't get nervous on stage, very nervous, but I got through the show, and then I had the night show. And when I went into the same place at the beginning of the night show, I'm like, yeah, okay, I did it. I guess I'm going to do it again. So I'm like, I went from, wow, I'm so nervous to, okay, here's another performance.
Yeah, it didn't take long, did it? Didn't take long for the jaded, rock star to come out of you.
Oh yeah.
So how long did Let It Be run?
It didn't run that long. There was some issues which I will not get into, but we did end up touring all over the world. We went through 2015. We toured Canada in the worst winter Canada had, and we were going west as the storm was following us west.
Fantastic.
Like the bus broke down a couple of times. It was something, but it was also a lot of fun. And then at the end, they sent us to New Zealand. We were just like, warmth,
Yeah. I've never been to New Zealand. How'd you like it down there?
Oh, it was beautiful. Yeah, it was amazing. So it would be like, I'd go like take a ferry to an island and hang out on the beach during the day, and then we'd go play the show the next day. So
life of a rock star.
Yeah.
That's all right. You've got reason to toot your own horn. Right behind you is a copy of your brand new album, Elements, man. Thank you for sending me a copy, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
I appreciate it. I do cry like a baby and bitch and moan. I just did my John Anderson review. for his new album yesterday. And I think the first 5 minutes of it was me crying about not getting an advanced copy from the label. Yeah, who's turning into the prima donna now? But the reality is that I need to get excited. I'm a human being. I need to get my my excitement level up on a project if I want to talk about it. And there's no better way to get this guy excited than to throw some vinyl at him, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic record for the peeps. Just to let you know, it starts with a side-long epic. Look at that, y'all. Called Elements. It's like 21 minutes long, broken up into 5 parts. Really, really cool. But you know what surprised me, JT? I might like side 2 better. And I'm a prog guy. All 4 of these songs on side 2 are dynamite, man.
Thank
Especially
you.
Bootleg Gasoline. That song destroys me. I love it.
You know what's funny about that? So when we were me and Todd were putting the album together, because Elements, the piece did come out earlier, and we were like, well, what should side 2 be? We're like, well, let's take a couple of like the recent singles and maybe a couple other songs. And we kept going back and forth. Should Bootleg Gasoline be on this, or should we put another song? And I think in the end we said, this is a pretty heavy album, some heavy themes. Let's put a really silly song like Bootleg Gasoline on. So I'm glad we did.
I'm glad you put it on there because it's a fun track. It's a great track. Talk to me a little bit about who you've got on the album performing with you.
At the time, I had a band throughout the 2010s that was just called JT Curtis and Mad Mongoose, and it evolved, as people were available and weren't. Todd Meredith is my kind of like my Steven Van Zandt, if you will. He's the backup singer and rhythm guitar player, plays some lead as well sometimes. And he's like great with lyrics. He's a great writer himself. He's got his own album that he just sells at his shows. So he was really, really a big part in making it happen. We also got Joan Chu on bass from the band Les Zeppelin, if you've ever heard of them.
I have heard of them.
Yeah, great Led Zeppelin tribute. They're a lot of fun. And she is a badass bass player, also plays violin on the song Home Last Stand. Emily Seibert, who was co-writer on the song Never Let the Bastards Grind You Down. She also sings and plays some keyboards. Darcy McRae, who's a drummer. He's another guy who subbed on Broadway. Chris McBurney, also from Let It Be. He drummed on Never Let the Bastards Grind You Down. And Dino Covelli plays a keyboard solo on Bootleg Gasoline, who's in my Pink Floyd tribute show, Pompeii Floyd plug. So many people. It's a lot. Sharif Clayton.
So this thing is self-released, right? You've got it available on your Bandcamp.
Yep.
How is the best place for people to hear your music, to buy your music? Do you want them to go to your Bandcamp? Is that the preferred methodology?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, Bandcamp takes a fee, so obviously it's
chunk,
which is fine. It doesn't bother me.
Do you have a website that they can order it from direct?
There's a link. If you go to jtcurtis.com, it just gives you links. But I have a Patreon, and I tell people if you sign up for my Patreon, where you also get to see all of my history of rock videos and album reviews, commercial free and unedited, because YouTube, we can't put too many copyrighted things on there. Despite it being educational content, but
Notice I've never once put any kind of music on this channel ever.
Yeah, I do.
For that, I don't care if I own the license. I don't care if I got permission. I know how YouTube plays, and sometimes they're weird. So I take no chance. Yeah.
I don't blame you, my friend.
Yeah.
But they can also just message me if they want to, Venmo me or Zelle me. And I literally just pack them up and send them in this place. Cool. So either way.
I will put a link in the description to JT Curtis Bandcamp page where you can listen to this amazing album. You can order this amazing album. Yeah, like I said, it's got the Sidelong Epic on side one. Talk to me about writing that, because I see we've got some other songwriting credits in there, and I see your dad. Is that some of the narration? Is that some of that him?
Yeah. So to get this out of the way, basically what happened was my dad was diagnosed with ALS in 2015, which, if you don't know what ALS is, like Stephen Hawking had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Yep, and which is basically a death sentence. They don't know what to do with it. And he was a poet his entire life. He always wrote poetry. So he started chronicling his battle with ALS into a series of poems. I should probably go grab a copy of this, but he put it out in a book called In and Out of Dreaming, which is still available on Amazon if you want to buy it. Some of the proceeds go to ALS research. And when his voice was going, his friend Lou Cortese, thank you, Lou, had him read his poetry and got it on video. So we had him reading everything. And as far as the music is concerned, like a lot of it, like Earth, for example, was very much about, the man that who was my father, and I grew up watching him deteriorate. Like Air, for example, was, I remember writing Air. I think I was on the bus to a gig, and I think we were going to Rhode Island. That's why I said down a windy Rhode Island lane. And there's a moment in that piece that kind of became a mantra where I say, because the other thing to note is that the piece is partially inspired by the cartoon show Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you've ever seen it.
No way.
Yeah. Elements.
That's cool. Yeah. I get it.
And it's even ordered in that the way she says it in the water, earth, fire, air. But in the air, I say, there's no owl who can tell you the answer. There's no creed to lead you home. No Sifu can teach you to spire. Peace of mind you must find on your own. And that last line just kind of became my mantra. So in dealing with grief and dealing with, PTSD, whatever it is you got to deal with. And I guess when Todd and I were going through it, and we were saying, well, we should use his words as kind of a, sort of moody bluesish sort of way to
exactly,
and it really did add, I think, a lot. There's still moments when I listen to a lot of those when it does kind of get to me. It's a little difficult to perform sometimes, but
it's very personal, right? This whole Elements is really personal, whereas side two felt more just like 4 really cool songs.
In a sense, I think they are all also personal. You and Only You I wrote for my wife.
Beautiful song.
Thank you. Never Let the Bastards Grind You Down came out of being in the pandemic. It was also during the 2020 election, which was a time in and of itself.
And that kind of makes sense, because the way that song starts rhythmically, it's kind of like, where am I? What's going on? There's some chaos to the rhythmic pattern at first until we settle down and figure out what's going on. Kind of like where a lot of people were at that particular time, right? The politics had kind of, poisoned the well for a lot of people, including myself. That's why I'm voting for Jesus this year. I'm writing him in.
Very nice. I wonder what Jesus stands on trying to make Spotify give us a fair share of our.
I don't think Jesus is a big fan of Spotify.
That's right.
I don't think he likes it much at all. But
somebody had a really funny meme where there was a picture of George Harrison, like circa All Things Must Pass era, on the wall, like when he was, Mr. Guru and everything.
Right.
And like an older woman is praying to that picture, and it says, I don't know if I have the heart to tell her that she's praying to a picture of George Harrison.
I've seen the same thing, but with David Gilmour.
Yes. So the moral of the story, kids, is that both David Gilmour and George Harrison are Jesus Christ.
Apparently so. But we could make a case that we're all Jesus, right? We all have the Spirit in us. we're all sacred beings. We absolutely are. I believe that 100%. And that's why Beatles music always spoke to me. Were the Beatles important to you, or did you just get the gig and
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny, like this is, people are going to hate me for saying this. I almost feel like doing the gig kind of took a little bit of the magic away, because
right.
when you have to do I Saw Her Standing There like 8 times a week, 8 days a week, ha ha ha. And like we would do it at every sound check, and it's like, what used to be a song that I absolutely love now is just kind of like, yeah, okay. Like last night, I was at a good friend's party, and we got up and we're like, what song we can play? And we just ended up playing "Come Together." I've played "Come Together" so many times. Like,
yeah,
we know it. We might as well. But growing up, no, I mean, the Beatles are the reason I got into playing guitar. I'll still always remember first time the funny thing, I've told the story many times. The reason I got into the Beatles is because, aside from my dad playing the records when I was a kid and too young to remember, there was a Simpsons episode that's basically a one long parody of the Beatles.
Yeah.
And Barney starts going out with this Japanese conceptual artist. I wonder who that is. And they have this moment. It's like, barbershop is growing stale. I'm taking it new places. And then you hear a tape and it's like, number 8. Number 8.
I remember that. I want to watch that episode again, man. It's been too long. Yeah. That was a good one.
So I asked my dad, I'm like, what is this joke? He said, there's a song called Number 9, and he played me the White Album, and that's how I first heard the White Album. So thank you, Simpsons.
Absolutely.
Even though I wish the show would end, but
Yeah, it's probably time. Its cultural significance is over. The age of its, being a cultural zeitgeist certainly will be. I mean, how long has that thing been on the air? Like 30 years or something?
I mean, it was on the Tracy Ullman show back in the late 80s. I mean, it's like...
So there you go. Yeah, over 30 years then, if you include the Tracy Ullman stuff. But I've always been a fan of anytime, you see cartoons or movies or anything, reference bands. I mean, there was an Emerson, Lake and Palmer reference in The Simpsons one time. I guess Homer's driving around and he finds an Emerson, Lake and Palmer CD and he starts listening to it. I love that kind of stuff. We're talking to JT Curtis, boys and girls. In case you were wondering who this guy is, on the Prog Corner today, it's none other than JT. Brand new album called Elements. Very excited about it. We were going to just, do like a regular album review and whatnot, but I figured it'd be more fun having you on and just talking about you, your life, your experiences, your YouTube channel, which is obviously a great intersect point there, because I do love what you do over there. Sounds like you've got some exciting plans for the YouTube channel. What's your goal with it, actually? Because you don't start a YouTube channel just to put videos up. There's got to be like an end game, right? There's got to be a goal in mind.
Well, to be honest, that's kind of what I just did when I started.
Yeah, there you go.
I just started doing videos because it was something to do. I later found out that I was actually doing a lot to teach myself how to video edit.
Yeah.
But no, I just started by just putting up videos because I had needed something to do because, I didn't have any friends. So
I know that feeling.
But I mean, I guess when the Angry Video Game Nerd and some of those guys started popping up and it turned out you can actually make a living out of that, it intrigued me. And I was like, well, maybe I could do that. But it also is just kind of like, I love playing music first and foremost.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't mind just my YouTube, whatever you want to call it, like my tiny bit of YouTube stardom or whatever. I'm a star. Yeah, right.
Yeah, man.
But whatever it is, it's just kind of like, I kind of like, I know some people on YouTube say if you want to do really well on YouTube, you need to post fast and often and just it's quantity over quality. I don't believe in quantity over quality. Like I'm working on what History of Rock 2010s. We put it off for a while.
Yeah.
Because one, it's like it's only been 4 years since the decade's been over.
True.
And two, I sort of felt like I don't want to rush into it. Like we
Right.
were going to film it earlier, and I looked at the script and just said, "It's not ready yet. Let's
Yeah.
wait. Let's hold off."
Yeah.
Um,
Your content is definitely geared more towards scripting and editing and getting that whole look and feel and stuff like that versus what I do is just hit record and let my big mouth start running and see what kind of trouble I can get into. It's
I like it
amazing
though.
I haven't gotten in that much trouble.
I've gotten into trouble a little bit. I actually did I went to go see the Elvis movie. And I just literally came home and I had a gig afterwards, and I actually walked out of the Elvis movie because I hated
Wow.
it.
Wow.
It's a terrible movie. I'm not a Baz Luhrmann fan. I'm sorry, Baz Luhrmann
Yeah.
fans out there. And I did it like you said. I just did it in one go,
Yeah.
and I wasn't happy with it, but I put it out anyway, and I made a thumbnail. I walked out. People are
Right.
just, and everybody's just thinking, "Oh, it's clickbait." It wasn't clickbait. That was
No,
my actual
that's
thoughts on
right.
it. Ooh, man, did I get a lot of
No,
blowback
I
on that
bet. I
one.
bet. It's amazing. It's just crazy when you're on this platform. All of a sudden, people feel like they can take shots at you. It's
Oh yeah,
weird, but we're setting ourselves up. We are now. When you're on YouTube, you're a public figure of whatever level. There's obviously varying degrees. We're not all like Anthony Fantano over there on the needle drop with 18 million subscribers. Some of us are just scraping by trying to make it happen. But the reality is that the thing that excites me about YouTube is that a little guy like me, a nobody that nobody's ever heard of before, could start a YouTube channel, and all of a sudden I'm making noise, man. People are paying attention. I'm making money, and it almost makes me feel bad that I know I'm making more money than 99% of the musicians that I talk about, their albums that I review, because I'm in the black, right? I'm making money doing this, and you know how it is as a musician, man.
oh
It's really
yeah.
hard to turn a profit.
Oh, incredibly hard to turn profit. And it's like, it's like I would love to be just playing this all the time,
Yeah,
but it's
I
like,
bet.
hey, we got to go out and play, the Beatles music or Pink Floyd's music or
Yep.
Fleetwood Mac's music, which I still love doing. I mean, the Pink Floyd show we now do, that's one of my favorite shows
Oh,
because
I
like
bet.
we really focus in on like we're called Pompey Floyd, and we really like we do like Careful What That Axe, Eugene,
Oh, I
and
love that
even
track.
even people who are Pink Floyd fans like, you do Careful What That Axe, Eugene? I
Yeah,
think we're the only Pink Floyd band that does that
I love it.
because Dino, our keyboard player, he can do the scream. He can
Yeah,
do Roger's scream. I mean,
yeah.
if you go and watch Pompeii, watch them do Careful With That Axe, Eugene, Roger does the scream. And you're like, that's freaking death metal,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
mean, wow. So
I think Roger's underrated in a lot of areas, to be honest with you. He's a
yeah,
punching bag for a lot of Prog fans because of his politics. And, let's be
yeah.
honest, Pink Floyd wasn't the most technically demanding band in the world. So people like to diss his bass playing or whatnot. They're wrong, man. They're dead wrong. Take a listen to Roger Waters playing. That guy's good, brother. He's a good
His
player, man.
time is solid. I mean, him and Nick are. If you listen to like, listen to the funk section of Echoes and Live at Pompeii,
Yeah, yeah.
Roger and Nick, they're locked,
I,
man. And
yeah.
listen, I'll take somebody playing a really tight four on the floor, playing over a really loose, like attempting to do Neil Peart
Oh,
badly
yeah.
any day.
Oh yeah, I listen to a lot of prog, man. I get so many albums sent to me to review, and that's kind of my number one complaint. Besides a lot of the vocals, is the fact that the drummers don't understand what a pocket is, man. I
Yeah,
don't care if you're in 11/8. You still need to find that pocket, man, and find that groove, find that that lock with the bass player. And they're just I'm just showing off and trying to I'm practiced for 20 years. I want to show off all my techniques and whatnot. That's lame. Nobody wants to
yeah,
hear it. If it's in
yeah.
service to the song, that's great. Otherwise, yeah,
I
not
got
what I want to hear at all.
I got to do a gig with Kofi Baker, Ginger Baker's son,
Yeah,
and he was like,
I hear he's good.
"Oh, he's fantastic." It was
Really?
great playing with him, and I got
Yeah.
to do a video with them where we talked about Cream. But he even said the same thing. It's like, "Hey, you can play all the rudimentary fills that you want, but if you don't have a pocket, you don't have a song."
And it's true with all instruments. I mean, I get into the debate all the time. Who would you rather have in your band? Steve Vai or David Gilmour?
Well, I mean, not
I'll
only with
I'll take David Gilmour. I'm sorry, I will. I love them both, but you know,
well, not only with David Gilmour do you get, his fantastic solos. David Gilmour, solid rhythm guitar player. Like
yeah,
you listen to even Another Brick in the Wall, and you're like, man, I mean, this could have been on a Chic song. I mean,
dude,
it's,
that's a lost art. You hit the nail on the head. I was listening to a recent album, and I was actually shocked that the rhythm guitar playing was good because I'm like,
hmm,
when's the last record I've heard where I've actually listened to a rhythm guitar player doing something interesting? It's really a
yeah.
lost art, and I realized that when I watched Van Halen, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think Eddie's a great rhythm guitar player. I was like, I
I
don't
think
think he
he
really understands rhythm guitar.
I think he can be. I think it's just a
Yeah,
different kind of rhythm guitar playing. I mean, you're not going to have him come on and do like a Nile Rodgers thing, obviously.
yeah,
But you listen to that first album, he's playing some solid rhythm chops. It's just like that's not what he became known for,
sure.
obviously.
Yeah,
So
and I guess that wasn't really the main focus of that band, that's for sure. But yeah, preaching to the choir. I'm a huge Van Halen fan. I
oh
love
yeah.
their first two albums probably as much as any two hard rock albums ever recorded. I just think they were amazing. And David Lee Roth, come on, man. I get sick and tired of people dissing David Lee Roth. Name a better frontman in 1978.
The thing about David Lee Roth is I think he grounded that band.
Yeah,
Like, because look, you can listen to Eddie and Alex like show their chops off all day long, but at the end of the day, you need somebody to come in with a melody.
yeah.
And David Lee Roth, I mean, say what you will about him, he wrote some great melodies.
Oh yeah, you did. And you needed that guy, that focal point on stage, because let's face it, girls don't care how fast Eddie's fingers are flying. The girls didn't care about that, man. You need to bring the
Well,
girls to the show, and that's what
well,
David Lee Roth did.
well, it depends on what position you're using your fingers for, but
There you go. Yeah, that's very true.
I'm
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah,
get in so
man.
much trouble now.
Oh, that's all right. We keep it clean in the Prog corner. Hey, illusions are fine. Double entendres are fine. I I just have a thing. I curse like a sailor. I really do. Every other word out of my mouth is a curse word, but I'm on like episode 487 of the Prog Corner, and I haven't cursed once on it. Something happens when that red light comes on. You know exactly what I'm talking about too.
Yeah, yeah,
As a
yeah.
musician who spent plenty of time in the studio, and now as a YouTuber, you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. That red light comes on, something happens. Like the real performers, the true stars, they understand that that's go time, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's it.
I mean, like I said, I mean, I kind of grew up with the angry video game nerd, and if
Yeah,
you've ever watched his stuff, he
yeah.
likes to swear a lot with some very colorful
Oh yeah,
metaphors.
oh
But
yeah.
unfortunately, YouTube's gotten a bit, I'm not really a big fan of censoring swearing because it's like, oh, children like, listen, I was a kid. I used to hear those words all
Oh
the
yeah.
time on the
Yeah, it's
playground.
ridiculous. And the truth is that especially if you curse within the first 7 seconds of your video, that's when
Mhm.
it gets you. If
Exactly.
you bury it later on in your video, it's probably not a big deal. But
Yeah.
those first 7 or 8 seconds, if you curse there, they're probably going to restrict it. They're going to age restrict it, which means your video is going to die a slow, painful death. So again, we don't take any chances here because, like I said, no, maybe you started a YouTube channel just to post stuff. But I had an intention. I had a plan. There was a very specific plan. I had an image in my mind of what I wanted to do, the channel I wanted to create, the community I wanted to create. I had very specific goals. And number one was world domination. That was at the top of the list. Yeah, I wrote all my goals down for the Prog Corner. And number one was world domination. I want to be the number one spokesperson for prog rock in the entire world, period, bar none, which is ridiculous for a guy that nobody's ever heard of before. But that's all right. That's the beauty of YouTube. You can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be. And it's the great democratization of talent, in that before you had to have somebody behind you, a TV network, or an agent, or some kind of management push. Now you just need a smartphone and and some kind of a cell signal so you can get your video uploaded. That's all you need now. It's crazy.
Well, I think you need a little bit more than that. I
Yeah,
mean, you can just do that, and
yeah.
I think a lot of people do that. But I think at a certain point, I think people do appreciate that. I think people do appreciate some musicianship and some creativity going on, which
Yeah.
isn't, like you said, it doesn't mean you have to, you know, let me put it to you this way. I think after I review King Crimson's album, the next one I'm going to do is Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick. And, I'm thinking about that moment when they go into 5/4 and it's like, it's tight as hell. It's like, you don't need to be like, hey, look at us, we're playing in 5/4 and stuff like that. But I think sometimes people will, I think sometimes people can pick up on musicianship more than a lot of people give them credit for. I think
Oh, for sure.
people can tell when. I think one of the problems, and I'm going to talk about this in the 2010s, I think one of the issues right now with music is that since the 2000s, especially, since it's become very assembly line, and unfortunately, the record companies just kind of, have a monopoly over the radio stations and over advertising and over the YouTube algorithm and every algorithm on TikTok and everything. They play it safe and they make records really fast, and they're like, we got to focus on image, so let's just regurgitate the same four on the floor thing over and over again. So I think that's why a lot of younger people even it kind of go back to the older stuff. They go,
Yeah.
oh, well, this is interesting. Dark Side of the Moon, I've never heard an album like this. Or even Nirvana. Let's like, you might not think Nirvana's like all that musically crazy, but even nowadays you listen back to them like, man, Kurt's, he's letting that emotion happen,
I'm a big fan. You don't need to qualify that statement. Kurt Cobain was a genius, point blank, period. That's it. No further discussion required on that one, man. Absolutely. Yeah. And if I think back, if we had the access to YouTube and Spotify and all this stuff back in the 70s, it's just crazy. Kids nowadays, sooner or later, every single person that's interested in music will recoil or react against what's going on currently. We did it when we were kids. They're going to do it. And now they have the access to the entire catalog of pre-recorded music, everything at their fingertips. That's exciting. It creates a lot of opportunities. I know people think rock is dead. You mentioned that, maybe 2010 was, that point in time at which rock was dead. I might point to 2012 because that was the year Arcade Fire won Best Album at the Grammys. Probably going to be the last rock album to win that, so that might be the time I point to. But there's plenty of opportunities now. Yeah, we're in a downtime right now, but did anyone ever say jazz is dead?
Nope. Well, but even like remember when Olivia Rodrigo's song "Good for You" came out and had like a Paramore feel, which was like kind of right
I
around.
love her.
Yeah, it's like
I love her.
Oh, rock and roll. It's like
absolutely. We're finding rock in weird places. Olivia Rodrigo, Miley Cyrus, right? I mean, we're finding these bits of rock and roll. Have you listened to any songs on the country chart lately? They don't sound like country to me, man. About half of them sound like rock songs. And you've got like Beyonce and Little Nas X, and you've got all these different players now in that genre. Rock isn't dead. It's just trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. Because, and all these other forms, country, blues, jazz, have been around for a long, long, long time. Rock is now a mature genre, so it's just trying to figure out what it wants to do when it grows up. The kids will come back to it. Of course they will. Nobody wants to hear that sped up TikTok music forever. Kids are going to grow up into actual adults that have brains that actually function properly. So my hope is that not just prog rock, but rock music in general has a renaissance. Of course it will. Everything comes back, right? Everything that's old becomes new again. So it's just a matter of time. But I want to make sure we are well positioned so that when that moment comes, when that moment in time strikes, we're ready for it, man. We are ready for it with the architecture, with the structure, with labels and bands and venues and everything we need so that when that time comes, we're ready to take the next level. And it's going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. I might be dead, but it's going to happen.
I might be as well.
Yeah.
I'm very much a pessimist. So, it's like when Roger talks about all his politics and stuff like that, everybody's like, oh, he's so negative. I'm like, have you been listening to Pink Floyd? Like, I remember somebody, when Trump was running the first time around, he plastered Trump's face when he was doing Pigs, and a couple of friends of mine who were Trump supporters, they walked out of there and was like, oh, why does he have to bring politics, and why can't he just play his music? Have you heard the original version of Pigs?
Yeah.
Like, he literally calls out Mary Whitehouse. He's been doing this for years.
And, it's not just Pink Floyd. And, because politics, especially in the West, have just gotten so ridiculous and full of vitriol and stuff like that, that there's definitely been a certain reaction. Artists, they shouldn't talk about politics. Leave politics alone. Just sing your song. It's like, Marjorie Taylor Greene telling LeBron James, just shut up and dribble. Absolutely not, man.
No.
I'm a human being. I got a voice. I got a mouth. And if I'm a star, I got a platform. I can influence people. Bands and musicians have been doing that from time immemorial, man. Are you serious?
You know what is one of my all-time, this may actually be one of my all-time favorite rock and roll songs, Ohio by Neil Young.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ, he, which is on your shirt. Him and David Crosby saw the Time, was it Time, I think? They saw the news article about what happened at Kent State, and he wrote it immediately. Yeah. And David Crosby called up Graham Nash, said, book the studio right now. Great and they song. Went in, recorded it, and, God bless Ahmet Erdogan, who I met, by the way.
No way.
And he just said, all right, give me the master tape. I'll get it out as soon as possible. And it's just like, it's such a time capsule of that moment. I mean, it's like.
It's so weird. I'm more excited that you met Ahmet Erdogan than if you would have told me you'd met George Harrison. What a nerd I am.
I mentioned this in the History of Rock 2000. So my mother, who was also in the music business for years and years and years, she worked with Ahmet a little bit.
Wow.
So I got to talk with Ahmet on the phone because this is like the early 2000s. I was just starting to put out music, and I sent something to Atlantic, and through her connection, I was able to talk to him. This was around the time that Napster was, putting the industry into a bind. And I'm talking to Ahmet, and he's literally just going, the music business is over. We're not developing artists anymore. It's just like, gee, thanks, Ahmet.
And he wasn't wrong. A few very short years after his death, his beloved Atlantic Records would be signing people like Danielle Bregoli, Bad Baby. Remember her? Cash Me Outside from the Dr. Phil show. Those are their big signings now. The music industry's just a tad bit different than it was in Ahmet's heyday. But what a genius, what a giant. What a towering figure of the music industry he was.
I think the key difference is he just really liked music. I mean, he was a businessman, of course, but he also liked me. He was also a musician, and it's kind of like there's that great clip of Frank Zappa where he's talking about, one of the things that happened in the 60s and 70s is that think about who was running the, record companies. These were old guys with cigars and stuff, and they listened to the music and went, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Let's put it out. If it sells, it sells. And then by like the late 70s, it started becoming like, well, we have to, make as much money as we can. And research shows that, what was it they said during the disco era? It was like, we've proven medically that this BPM specifically targets the brain. It's like, oh God.
And the chorus has to hit within the first 15 seconds. It's all formulaic. And that was Zappa talking about that, how back in, the 50s and the 60s, it was these old men in suits. And he said, I preferred dealing with them because they just didn't know anything. And they were like, whatever, let's give it a try, see if it sells. And then by the 70s and the early 80s, it became all these yuppies, with their Armani suits now and their bad attitudes, and they thought they knew everything. And Zappa was like, these guys are 10 times worse. I prefer these old, because if you think about it, a lot of the major labels, they had no idea. I mean, they were just putting stuff out and it was selling. So they're like, whatever, man. They didn't understand it. Who would understand that Jethro Tull would have back-to-back #1 albums that each one had one song on them? I mean,
Well,
it was a crazy time.
I mean, think about Pink Floyd. Okay, they had a little success with Syd Barrett. It took them a long time to get to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah,
I mean, they had a little bit of success with Adam Hart, Mother, and Echoes and stuff, but like, I think, you know, the record company's like, well, they're doing some cool stuff. Let's see what they do, you know?
Yeah. And
you know?
let's put out an album without their faces, without the name of the band, without the name of the album, and it's going to turn out to be one of the greatest selling albums of all time. I mean, the label execs had to have been like, this is not going to work, man. You got to put the name of the band on the album cover at least. But, you know, great art just upsets every single known axiom there is. It cuts through everything.
I think there just was a moment. I'm starting to sound like an old soul myself. I think there was just a moment. I wasn't there, but my parents have told me about.
You got a boomer heart, JT.
There was a time in the 60s, late 60s, going into the early 70s, where I think that was just kind of like, let's experiment. Let's see what happens. Let's do some interesting things. And then, like, outside of that one little window, like everything else, with a few exceptions, has just been, you know, oh, we got to follow the formula, and, you know, and so on and so forth.
And people wonder why some of us boomers seem to be stuck in the 70s, because there was definitely that post-Beatles hangover where, you know, label executives knew there was money to be made, but they had no idea what was going to do. So they just released anything and everything. It was a beautiful time. It really was.
Hey, I got an interesting question for you. I'm curious what you think, since you're a Prog man.
All right.
When I was thinking about what Prog albums I was going to review, do you consider the Who's Quadrophenia to be a Prog album?
Oh, that's a great question. And the answer to that is 100%. I think the Who put out exactly 2 Prog albums. They had some proggy stuff, you know, on the first 3 albums, and, you know, some of their later stuff. But to me, Tommy and Quadrophenia both check every single box for, is it Prog? Is it not Prog? The answer to both is absolute yes, especially Quadrophenia. That album kills me, man. I would probably put it number 3 favorite albums of all time, behind Tales from Topographic Oceans and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I must like double albums because London Calling's in that mix too.
That's interesting that Tales from Topographic Oceans is in one of your top.
That's my #1 album of all time.
You know, I got to give it another shot. I think the first time I heard it, especially coming after Close to the Edge, I was like, this isn't doing it for me, but it's got some great moments on it.
I think the best way to approach it is just to keep in mind Stephen Wilson's 2-word description of Tales from Topographic Oceans. The best description I've ever heard of any album ever. He said Tales was hardcore yes.
It is.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, just take everything that Yes was and just blow it up and make it even more ridiculous and more crazy and more pompous and more pretentious. Just blow it up and just make it absolutely as ridiculous as possible. What's not to love, man? That just tickles me.
Yeah.
No end. I love it when bands swing for the fences, even if they maybe didn't 100% hit the mark. It's just always exciting when bands have that ambition, and maybe a little bit of tailwinds from a label, maybe allowing them a little creative freedom. That's always exciting too. And again, that's why the 70s were so great, man. These A&R guys were not coming in the studio saying, "Oh, this is a 20-minute song." And they didn't care as long as it was selling. They didn't care. So the formulas hadn't been developed yet, and it was a really exciting time. And again, everybody was drunk on Beatlemania still in the early 70s, and that definitely contributed to it. But it was a time in history that will never be repeated. But you know what? Today's pretty good too, man. 2024 is pretty good because we got artists like JT Curtis putting out really solid records like Elements. Very, very cool, man. JT, what else is going on? What else you got cooking? You got any gigs planned? Any big events you want to tell us about before you go?
Well, I'm still trying to put together. We were going to do a record release party, which didn't end up happening. insert, the artist struggle here.
Yeah.
My Pink Floyd Pompeii Floyd show has a couple of shows. We're going to be in Long Island in New York. I live in New York, so we're going to be in Long Island at the Warehouse on September 19th. We're performing "Wish You Were Here" and "Dark Side of the Moon" in their entirety
At the Warehouse.
Yep, and
Nice.
then on October 3rd for a Live at Pompeii's anniversary, the anniversary of when they were at Live at Pompeii and recorded it, we're going to be at Cafe Wa performing almost all of Live at Pompeii. We don't have a dog, so we can't do Seamus.
Right.
But yeah, and then like I said, putting out History of Rock 2010s at the end of the year, which will be our 10th year anniversary of doing History of Rock. So the History of Rock series is now the History of Rock.
There you go. It's got its own history now. We're going to have the history of rock channel.
Exactly.
But I don't want you to feel any kind of certain way that you need to be doing Pink Floyd covers and whatnot to pay the bills. My number one album of 2024, JT, is this one right here. Swedish band called Ritual. The Story of Mr. Bogged, Part 1. The singer's got an eerie and uncanny resemblance to one Freddie Mercury. So guess what he does for a day job? Yeah, he's in a Queen cover band, and that pays his bills so that he can do the great prog rock stuff. So, it's fine. Everybody, these days you gotta find a way to get revenue streams wherever you can.
I will tell you this: out of all of the cover and tribute shows I do, Pompeii Floyd's my favorite one to do, because we just if we're gonna if Echoes is in the set, we're just oh, we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. And you'd be surprised, because I think a lot of people are oh, well, you got to play the hits, you got to play Another Brick in the Wall, you got to play Comfortably Numb. We've had people say are you gonna do One of These Days? Are you gonna do?
Bands are different, man. As far as big bands, the Zeppelins and the Guns N' Roses of the world. Pink Floyd fans are just a little bit different, man. They go deep, they're not just concerned about, the hits. They know every song off of every album and every era too. It's weird because Pink Floyd had 3 very, very distinct and different eras, but their fans don't seem to care. They love it all.
Oh, yeah. Very controversial opinion. You know what is one of my favorite Pink Floyd albums? The Division Bell.
Whoa. I love the Division Bell. I think it's an amazing album. I love it's such an improvement over Momentary Lapse. And that's the thing that really got me, because I really liked Momentary Lapse of Reason. I thought it was a really nice little AOR record. And then Division Bell came out. I'm like, okay, this is what they could do. This is what they should do. So
and you know what the key is? Rick was writing again.
Yeah.
That was the key. I was yep, that's it.
Yeah, it was more of a band thing. I guess Momentary was almost like a Gilmour solo album. Still a great album. I love David Gilmour's voice. I'm excited about a new Gilmour album coming out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see him in November. He's gonna be at the Garden.
Sweet. Wow, that should be awesome. That should be awesome. Anyway, boys and girls, my guest today was the one and only JT Curtis. His new album, Elements. I'm going to put the link in the description. So go to his Bandcamp page, check it out, listen to his music, buy the album, help out independent artists. That's what we do, man. The major labels, they got enough money. Olivia Rodrigo, she's got enough money. Taylor Swift's got enough money. You know who doesn't have enough money? JT Curtis doesn't have enough money. So buy his record, boys and girls. Anyway, I love you guys. Don't forget, Sunday, 11 o'clock a.m. It's the live Sunday Prog stream where every week me and my friends, we get together and we just geek out about Prog. I don't even know what the subject is this Sunday. I haven't decided yet. It doesn't matter. Anyway, join us for that. And then next week, we'll just be continuing with more rants, raves, reviews. I might even do an album ranking. I haven't done an album ranking in a while, so I am looking at the Nectar discography. I think I'm going to rank the Nectar albums next week. We'll see. Anyway, I love you guys. Peace in the Middle East. Free the Tibet. free Ukraine, free Willie, and God save the king. Oh, save King Chucky. Oh, that boy needs your saving right now. That boy's got the cancer. I heard it's real bad. So bring him to America. Bring that boy to America right now. We'll fix him right up. We got some good doctors here. We got that good doctrine, and then we'll lay the healing hands on him. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the faithful hands of healing. Gonna take care of that boy. We're gonna do spells and incantations. Our prayer warriors are working 24/7. Help the king. The king got cancer. Oh, no, we gotta save him. Not gonna work. You know what is gonna work? Drinking some poison. Now that ain't gonna work. I know it's gonna work. Hey, Billy Bob, get me them snakes. Oh, we're gonna dance with snakes. Oh, look out. That's a big one. They're not going to get us. No way. Because I got the Spirit of the Lord in me. You got the Spirit of the Lord in you. I love you guys. I'll see you Sunday. Peace. In the Middle East.